Hello everybody, Andy here, and today we're looking at something that has nothing to do with Warhammer. We're looking at which miniature games line sells the most. This is something that I find incredibly interesting for just so many reasons. Because, you know, when you're online, you're in a bit of an echo chamber, right? Like, if you're into Warhammer, you only see Warhammer. If you're into Star Wars Legion, you can easily only see Star Wars Legion, etc, etc, whatever it is you're into. I've played some of the most sold games, and I kind of bounced off them perhaps, or some of them I have no interest in, but clearly some people do. So I just wanted to go down the list quickly, have a think about them, have a consideration for roughly 8 minutes. So, what is this? There is a website called ICV2, that's what's behind me here. It's just kind of a news website that tends to be all about the business side, well, more about the business side of hobbies, miniatures, card games, geekery, if you will, than most other news sites, which tend to focus on a review of the models per se. This is just sales, kind of. Anyway, every year, roughly, they do this list that we're going to read right now, which is the non-collectible miniatures lines. Why full 2003? Because obviously you have to wait till you can get data. Where do they get their data from? Well, obviously, look, you can't get data straight from the source. No company tells you this is exactly how many units we sold, right? Instead, they get it from talking to retailers, suppliers, etc, etc. How accurate are they? We don't really know. And of course, they don't actually give us a number. They just give us a ranking. So ultimately, everything is speculation. But when they say that Warhammer 40k is the top #1 seller, I don't think anybody really doubts them. Also, is that discussing IP? Is that discussing just miniatures? I'm actually not sure, to be honest. Anyway, before we look at the latest report, which just came out today, March 25th, that was 2 weeks ago. It's good that I'm on the ball. I want to quickly point out last year's, which was... I can't change the thing. You could see it on screen, but I can't see it. So, one moment, please, sirs. Thank you very much. So obviously we had Warhammer 40k first, yes. Age of Sigmar second. Again, this makes total sense, right? It's Games Workshop. We then have D&D. That's what Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures are. It's D&D miniatures. Now, I have to assume this is actual miniatures, otherwise, because it says miniatures in the title. It's not overall Dungeons and Dragons like source books, etc. It's just the model line, which blows my mind. That's crazy. But again, just goes to show that us tabletop Gs, we're not necessarily into D&D. And so the idea that D&D shares is the number 3 best-selling miniatures range is a bit mad, right? But no, it is. It beats everything else. Anyway, last year, again, we have a top 10. We then see Marvel Crisis Protocol, Star Wars Legion, both from Atomic Mass Games, Battletech. Now, if I recall, Battletech last year had a huge influx of sales, money, whatever, due to a Kickstarter it ran that was remarkably successful. And at the time, I was a bit shocked. I didn't really understand why. But again, Battletech, something you could argue is just as big and grand and fleshed out as Games Workshop's IPs, if not more so in certain situations. But something I personally have never really delved into. We then get Pathfinder, which again, crazy that a second D&D model line is in there. I know it's not D&D, thank you. Bones, yeah, kind of makes sense. Song of Ice and Fire by Simon. A year ago when this would have come out, I would have been like, what's that? But now I've actually played and enjoyed Song of Ice and Fire and have those models. So that's actually... I get it a year later, that's cool. And then Star Wars Armada, which I recall saying last year, oh, that's weird, Star Wars Armada, that's a dead game. And yes, it is a dead game. Correct. What's that doing there? I've got no clue. Anyway, let's get into this year's. So we obviously have Warhammer 40k at the top, obviously. Doesn't even need to be doubted. From everything we hear, from every insider source, from what we can understand, Games Workshop doesn't care about competition, because everything that isn't 40k is so far below them in sales, they are in a different league. Warhammer 40k outsells everything so much, it's irrelevant to them. They do not care anything about it. It's mad, from what we can tell. Like, for example, these other miniatures companies, Atomic Mass Games, Mantic, etc., Simon, they are fighting over the same pool of people because they share customers. Games Workshop customers are their own unique breed, and just because you play Warhammer doesn't mean you will necessarily look at anything else, which is a very interesting thing to discuss about it. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. We then get Knowles Wars Marvelous Miniatures. Cool. That is D&D still going strong. Makes sense. Battletech still up there at number 3. Interesting. Now, I'm actually very curious about what's happened here. Where's Age of Sigmar gone? Is it that everything else has had a big boost, or is it that Age of Sigmar has had a big drop? From a year ago, if I had to guess, I would say that a year ago, Age of Sigmar was still riding the wave of post-lockdown sales boosts, and that might have been what put it up there, whereas now it's finally tailed off and so has actually dropped in sales, so that these others may be selling the same amount, but just Age of Sigmar is going. Who knows? And maybe in 6 months, a year's time, we will see Age of Sigmar back up there, because we have the new edition launch, which is going to obviously skyrocket sales for Age of Sigmar. Who knows? We then get Battletech again. I should probably play Battletech. Like, if it's somehow the 3rd best-selling miniatures game, how have I not played it, right? Like, I barely even know what it is, which is crazy. We then get 2 Atomic Mass games, Star Wars Shatterpoint, Marvel Crisis Protocol. Now, again, this is quite interesting to see, because if you look at a video I did a couple of weeks ago, which was looking at tournament, like the most popular game, and looking at tournament sales. Well, this is the most popular game with somebody else looking at miniature sales, which is obviously a completely different metric. It's just very interesting that Atomic Mass Games has managed to get Star Wars Shatterpoint, Marvel Crisis Protocol, both up there in the top 5, when if we look at their sales, Marvel Crisis Protocol did in fact actually have more tickets sold to a tournament than Star Wars Shatterpoint. But both of these had, like, I think Marvel Crisis Protocol was 90 players, Star Wars Shatterpoint was 75, something like that. But you then look at Star Wars Legion, Star Wars X-Wing, even Star Wars Armada, and they sold, like, all of those were 100 plus tickets. I think Star Wars Legion was 256 and Star Wars X-Wing was in the 300s. So where are they? Where are they on this list? In fact, Star Wars X-Wing wasn't even on the previous one, but somehow Star Wars Armada was. It's just very odd, I feel. Anyway, this is just interesting. I love numbers, I love metrics, I love stats. I realise I haven't added much to this. I just find it incredibly interesting to see what is actually selling the most. In my opinion, you could just take Warhammer 40k off the top. We know that's the number 1 bestseller. Cool. Give us the gritty pit fighting ranking of the next 10. Like, that's really interesting to me. Star Wars Shatterpoint is the only of these top 5 games that I've actually played. I've quite enjoyed it. I will say one thing that I really appreciate about it is actually the models. I do like Star Wars as an IP in general, as a concept. Jedi are cool, etc., etc. But I feel like when you then translate that realistic look over to miniatures, it doesn't look as cool as perhaps Warhammer 40k does, because of course they're made miniatures first and they really go for it. Whereas Star Wars inevitably comes from real life first, where everything has to be just a far more realistic scale, obviously. However, the actual size of the miniatures, I really, really, really like Star Wars Shatterpoint and Marvel Crisis Protocol scale of models. I think they look much better on the tabletop, and I really appreciate that. I've got all of the core set for Star Wars Shatterpoint, and I bought the next 2, whatever they were, Dooku and Obi-Wan, I think. So I've got all of that. but I haven't played it in ages, and now maybe, seeing it here in the top 5 sellers, I might play it. Might force my local friends to play it with me, in fact. Because, and this is why I'm so surprised, it was actually Star Wars Shatterpoint being in this top 5 list that kind of inspired me to make this video. Because, again, it's all about local metas, right? And Star Wars Shatterpoint, top 4 selling game in the world for last quarter, in fairness, when it released. But I have not seen a single person in all of the groups that I frequent near me, or not that I go to them, but you know, I'm in those Facebook groups, Reddit groups, whatever, of local, or Discords of local players. I have not seen a single person play Shatterpoint. That's really odd. Why? Local metas are weird. That's the end of that discussion. Anyway, cool. Star Wars Shatterpoint, Marvel Crisis Protocol. I don't care about Marvel, so screw that. Maybe I should look into Battletech, but yeah. Warhammer 40k up top again, as always. Where on earth is Age of Sigmar gone? Alright, thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know what you think. Bye.